Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the third episode now of the Lawrence Harvey Cybersecurity Sit Down podcast. I'm joined here by David Cross, Chief Information Security Officer over at Oracle Cloud. Tune in the first Tuesday here of every month throughout 2023 with myself and colleagues around the industry and executive security leaders for some straight from the source insight into the minds of security practitioners. As always, my name is Alex, your host for today's conversation, principal recruiter here at Lawrence Harvey, focused on cybersecurity placements and client partnerships across all of North America. I'm joined here, as I said, by David Cross over at Oracle Cloud. The episode here is focused on specifically veterans and their impact in cybersecurity, as well as ways that those with military backgrounds can better grow their careers in the industry. As always, we'll take a bird's eye view into where the market's at overall here in 2023 as well. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to you, David, as I think our listeners would love to know how, I guess, you got your start in security. Also, hearing some insight into your military background would be wonderful, and we can go from there.
Thanks, Alex. Pretty excited to be here. I've been here at Oracle almost 5 years now, and I'm actually the CISO for the Oracle SaaS Cloud because we're a very large company and represent only one piece of it. But most interesting and most importantly, and I'm kind of honored, is that the past few years, I've been the executive sponsor for our veterans program, or MAVEN, right, which is our military affiliated veterans, employee network, right, one of our ERGs. And it's pretty exciting because also calling out, it's not just about veterans, but it's also about the spouses and the allies as well. And that's very, very important in our community.
100%. Thanks for the intro and really glad to have you on. Really appreciate the time. I guess just to start us off, kind of rip the Band-Aid off, if you will. I guess looking into the market now, we're just in Q2 as this podcast is going to go up. Some companies obviously going through unfortunate layoffs, and we're seeing a lot of changes in the banking sector. Things are kind of all over the place, if you will. But in cybersecurity, there's still thousands of jobs openings, despite the mantra that, quote unquote, nobody's really hiring, right? How have you taken the market, I guess, in the last 6 months or even beyond that? What are you seeing?
Well, I think there's an element, it's kind of a shift, right? And I think it's that there are lots of opportunities. And sometimes, maybe I'll use a bad analogy, is that everyone says, I only want to be in the tier one companies. I only want to go to Harvard, Stanford, Yale, et cetera. But also, there's a lot of other great schools out there, right? And I think if we look at the job market right now, there's a lot of companies, the startups, a lot of other enterprise, Fortune 1000 companies, all hiring. So it's not just, a couple of the top, tier one tech companies, but really when you take the bigger picture, I think of the whole economy, there are lots of cybersecurity jobs open despite layoffs that may be occurring in some companies.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the need within security is always going to be really present, and especially in years where costs are down, inflation's up, risk is very high. It's almost more important now to protect your digital assets, and cybersecurity more than ever. There's a huge need within the talent industry. So wonderful to hear. Obviously, yourself sitting within Oracle SaaS Cloud, obviously massive company. I'm sure you've got kind of a good view, but also coming out of Google and Microsoft in the past. I guess since moving over to Oracle SaaS Cloud, like you said, about 5 years or so, any kind of overall changes into the security market, especially from a talent standpoint? Are there any domains you're seeing are shifting more than others, or what's just kind of the overall landscape you think moving into the rest of the year?
Well, I think you think historically, and I wouldn't say for any specific company, right? Historically, there's been a lot of just being security focused, being security experienced. But I think we found, I'd like to call out from various people like, Ira Winkler or, Chenxi Wang, from Rain Capital, is it's not just about being a great security passionate person, but it's also being a great developer. Understand who your customer is, right? Having, sometimes the best skills you can have is being great at operations or being great at development or being great at infrastructure. The best security engineers are often the people that are experts and have experience in these areas that they're now protecting and monitoring.
Yeah, 100%. I would definitely agree. And it's definitely something hiring managers that we work with are looking for across the board as far as kind of foundational talents and skill sets, if you will. For you, coming out of the military, I guess, how do you think that your military background and experience and certainly your network especially has helped you kind of get to where you are today within the security field?
Well, I think the veterans, I think, bring a lot to the table. A lot of companies and businesses don't understand. But veterans is that one is they have a lot of values and principles, right? Integrity, honesty, attention to detail, loyalty, really to operate by a playbook, how to be able to operate, with reliability and focus when under fire, right? In security, things are under fire. But that's what we're trained to do, not just muscle memory, but it's like we have a playbook. And this is sometimes, especially is veterans trying to enter the civilian world, is that, okay, we need people in SOC, right, or operations, and saying that, hey, we can follow a playbook. When something occurs, they know how to operate, they can trust them and operate it. And I think that's one of the great starting points for many veterans that are leaving the service.
Yeah, for people that are breaking out of the service, getting into maybe the commercial sector, what's your biggest advice, I guess, as far as ways to hone your skill set while maybe still in the service and potentially stand out to hiring teams in general?
There's two things. I think a lot of people, they look at, hey, should I get a certificate? Should I get my certification? Things like that. Certainly, I can go back quite a few years ago saying, well, how do I get anyone to look at my resume? I actually took a Windows or a Microsoft training course, right? And I got my Windows NT Workstation 3.51, Microsoft Certified Professional, certification. Well, it helped me to get someone to look at my resume back then. It's been a while, you can tell.
Yeah.
But the other one, I think it's not just about that, but I think is demonstrate your skills, demonstrate your passion. A lot of people saying that, David, how can I get someone to look at my resume? It's like, do you have a blog on, what you're good at? Do you have a blog about your experience? Do you have a GitHub repo showing that, hey, here's some code you've written? And you create real world examples for people to show your passion, your interest in what you can do. And when someone asks, saying, ask about what are your skills, I say, hey, just go look at my GitHub repo. Just go look at my blog, and instantly you'll know what I can offer you.
100%. And from my perspective as an external recruiter, I think one nice thing that I'm able to approach a candidate about is obviously we're reaching out potentially about multiple jobs. So we're really able to take it from more of a bird's eye view, really understand people's motivations. Maybe they're active in the market, maybe they're not, but they just want to understand what's out there. We're really able to dig into, like I said, kind of that overall passion that might not come through if you're just kind of targeting or only interviewing with one company, for example. We've talked about soft skills a lot, integrity, etc. Outside of blogs or using GitHub, that kind of stuff, is there any way that you found successful for people to, I guess, promote their soft skills on their resume outside of just kind of listing everything? Is there anything that jumps out?
Good question. I think there's an element is, which what we really haven't talked about today, is building the network, right? And part of it is veterans, we have a natural or unique network, right? We're well connected. And I think is, you go back to us old school people, is like the classic book, never eat lunch alone, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like work your network, right? And making connections and understand a company. I think an example is that if you really want to get into a company, right, find someone there saying, do whatever it takes to get 5 minutes of their time. Here's one of my tips. Find a person saying, hey, can I get 5 minutes of your time or 10 minutes of your time? I will send you a $20 Starbucks gift certificate.
Yeah.
Just give me 10 minutes of your time so I understand what you're looking for and what it will take to get into your company. Now, it's about reciprocity. Now, some people may take that gift card and not give you anything, but the risk is kind of low. But many people will accept it and give you a little bit of their time. If it only costs you $20 to learn what it takes to get inside of the company you desire the most, it's worth more than $20.
Yeah, fair enough. One thing I look for and hiring managers ask us to look for a lot of times is just how active are they on LinkedIn? What does their network look like? Obviously, one that shows maybe passion and interest in the industry overall. And, maybe they've volunteered at their local OWASP chapter or participated in other events. That's one thing that on a resume can stand out and kind of, fact check the motivations and passion behind a lot of things. And I think looking into a resume as well, when you're going through your responsibilities and what you've done at a company, I've talked about this on past shows. It's really easy to just say, I was responsible for this, next, and just roll through it. But rather give anecdotes and see what the actual value you push through doing that task was. That's another one that's just kind of come to mind as far as ways to maybe promote your soft skills as well as your technical skills naturally, which is oftentimes for a recruiter, especially, those are usually the first things they're looking for is the technical skill set. That's obviously usually kind of the first gate, if you will. But it's really important for recruiters and hiring managers to really look at the full picture. And oftentimes recruiters, of course, have tons on their plate and they're rolling through maybe 200 resumes a day, let's say, right? So I think the first things that stand out are our format, like I said, and then what we were just talking about, your LinkedIn profile is one of the big ones. So I'd say for people, not just for a networking tool, but promoting your kind of passion and interest in the industry is a big one. talking about your network when finding a job or growing your career is crucial. Or here, you have another point.
Yeah, I think there's another element to that. Be careful because sometimes it be a double-edged sword, but sometimes
Yeah,
social media, not just Instagram or I
yeah,
say LinkedIn, but like there's Twitter and Mastodon, things like that. And sometimes I recommend sometimes mentees is kind of like you can have kind of one profile. It's about your personal interest, your celebrity interests in sports and things like that. Another one dedicated to cybersecurity, right? And people show about how you're a contributor, right? How how many people you have following you, how you're offering, in having that specific persona to cybersecurity or to other areas that you're interested in, right? And I think it can be very powerful if you use that weapon wisely.
Yeah, 100%. Going back on your network while you're still in the service, or maybe you've just recently transitioned, is there a way that you've heard from others, or maybe you found successful while you're still within the service to promote your private sector network and reach out to commercial clients, candidates, kind of the whole ordeal? Is it challenging to do that, I guess?
It is. I think as I also recommend going back to an element is that is kind of the last 6 months, right? Hey, are you working on the side, right? Are you working on a blog? Work on some projects. Get your skills refined and publish them. Put them on blogs. Put them on GitHub. Other places and things like that. And building your portfolio, if you will. Just like if you're going to be a fashion model, right? You have a portfolio of pictures, right?
Sure.
Do the same as an engineer.
Yeah, fair enough. We've talked about, and I've talked about on past episodes in the past, for people that are transitioning out of the military, there's often a conversation around timing, of course, in transitioning to the private or commercial sector. But you find a lot of people going straight into DoD contracting and working with some of the larger contractors in that sense, holding on to their clearance and just focusing on defense work, really potentially even throughout their whole careers. Is it worth it, one, you think, to hold on to that clearance and stay in that space, hone your skill set maybe, or do you think it's worth going into the commercial sector, if that is your end goal, of course, as early as you can, or what do you think about timing there, I guess?
Great question. I think there's one element, putting on the MBA hat on. What's the supply demand curve, right?
Yeah.
Certainly the tech sector right now, certainly the United States, government contracts are in high demand, right? And they pay very well. And if you actually have your clearance, right, there's a lot of jobs that are in demand right now. And even though that may not be your long-term passion, it's kind of like a great opportunity to take something that is an asset of yours, having a clearance, right, going into these jobs, right, and then using that as a stepping stone to where you want to go. So maybe 1, 2, 3 years it may take you to kind of get refined in the, yes, it may be the defense industry, right? But it gets you the time and transition to get ready to where you really want to go, right? And using it as a stepping stone, even though it may not be your longest term passion.
Yeah, 100%. I think staying in tune with where the market is important for anybody listening, for anybody in any job, really, right? But for veterans, I think, and even people maybe that didn't have military backgrounds and maybe have quote unquote pigeonholed themselves in certain industries. You see it a lot in higher regulated industries like finance and healthcare, where they'll oftentimes stay in that industry and other companies won't hire out of that industry. You see it all the time. I guess it kind of turns into my next question about cybersecurity domains and skill sets. And I know we touched on some of the foundational skills that are really important across all levels. Do you think it's worth people coming out of the military or just getting into cybersecurity in general to specifically focus on certain domains like security operations and cyber defense, or get into more red teaming, security engineering, et cetera? Or is it worth it to be more of a generalist, you think?
Oh, really good question. I think there's an element of, like people saying, red team and pen testing those are the coolest, titles and jobs and roles to have. But the reality is there's not that many positions open, right? So the supply demand curve is kind of opposite in that case. And also when there's that much supply and demand, right, there's much more competition, right? And that's sometimes an area that it takes time, right? You have more experience and being ready for it. And this is the things for many people that are passionate about the area. Doesn't mean that they won't get in, right? It's just maybe it'll take you a few years in investment in yourself and growth in the area to the right opportunity appears. So many people that a good example is then, well, why don't you start out in the SOC, right? The tier 1 SOC, and things like that. Like, well, that's not the sexiest, that's not the path, but it got your foot in the door, right?
Yeah.
And you can learn from that and build upon that. So I always say, it's all up to you.
Yeah, I love it. 100%. From your perspective, obviously being a very senior security leader within the market, what domains or skill sets are you seeing maybe an increased need in this year, obviously, as the market shifted a little bit? Are there any even?
I think one of the areas is I still try to really stress for people is, be able to write code, right? And I think
Yeah.
there's an element of people's like, do you have to be a developer? Do you have to have a degree in computer science to be to get jobs in cybersecurity? No, you don't.
Yeah.
But I see that over time, people can find themselves, they will get plateaued, right? Is that more and more things are based on engineering, development, coding and things like that. Build those skills, and because I think that will help you grow over time into the broader areas, right? And that's
Yeah.
something I can't stress enough to everyone I meet.
Yeah, 100%. Was it always your motivation to get into more security leadership? Or a lot of people obviously just enjoy, probably throughout their whole careers, being an individual contributor, very technical SME, for example. Was that something you had realized in the military that you wanted to get into leadership? Or I guess, where did that click? Or I'd be curious to understand where it clicks for a lot of people, to be honest.
Actually, I've never really thought about this before. If I reflect back on, I was an individual contributor for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's about with the opportunity that appears, but I think the real passion and desire comes over time is that can I help others, right? And certainly I feel very fortunate to, when I left the military, many people in my careers at many companies here, so Microsoft, others, in advancing is that helped me. And sometimes as you become more senior, even as an individual contributor, you find that you can help others even more, then sometimes that's the right thing to do, right? And you're passionate. I'm very passionate about when you can make others successful. It's quite rewarding in itself.
Yeah, 100%. Everybody has a role to play, surely. I think for people coming out of the military specifically, it's not something that's going to happen and by the click of a button, right? These plans or goals of yours probably take years at a time to plan out. So I'd say using your network and all the soft skills we mentioned in honing, it's going to be important for people to probably kind of realize those things. The earlier, the better, I would say. For veterans go ahead.
I was gonna say the analogy I like to use is like, some people know me I'm a long distance runner, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you're planning for a half marathon or a marathon, right? You build up a long plan. It's going to take endurance. And part of it's not just stamina. It's not just about speed. It's actually about the plan and like how you're going to be ready for that and being ready for all elements. But if you plan it very, very well and you train for it, the end finishing, right, is a big success. And everyone can hit it. You just have to plan for it very carefully.
It can be very rewarding. That's wonderful. I guess for people, for veterans listening or just security practitioners, maybe growing their career, breaking into the industry, are there any programs or companies you think do a very good job, one, of hiring or promoting veterans getting into the industry? Are there any programs you know of that do a good job with that? I guess I'd love to give the listeners maybe some tangible kind of follow-up aside from maybe just reaching out to us as far as ways that they can grow their career in that sense.
I wish I had the full list ready for that, but, there's a lot of companies, everything from, Oracle and Microsoft and others, right? We have our intern programs and others I think it's exciting as some members of my team have been through it, is really opportunities that people can join in, an internship and things like that, and getting the demonstrating the ability to grow and onboard, into the high tech or the cloud environments, and then given the opportunities to show what they can do. And I think you'd be surprised if you do a little searching. There's so many companies and programs out there, for veterans. But the one thing I always like to stress, it's about your commitment and passion, right, to get there. Because when you have the passion, it's always going to become infectious and people will invite you in. The second thing is really focus on continuous learning, right? I certainly, to this day, and people look at myself on LinkedIn, right, I'm always investing myself. I'm always learning, because the moment you stop learning is the moment you go stale and the path down, starts.
100%.
Now, that's where also I think veterans, have a major asset that many others do not, because of our history. It's like we're always given challenges and saying you need to go learn it, figure it out, and make it happen. And veterans always have that skill, and so those of us that have learned that do that exactly. When you see opportunities appear.
Yeah, 100%. Oftentimes I find they have really good kind of global experience as well, which a lot of these larger corporations are oftentimes looking for cybersecurity positions, just from a cultural aspect, which is wonderful. I guess two-part question here. What do you look for when you're assessing a candidate? Obviously, people that are reporting to you probably being quite senior within the industry already. What's the first thing you look for when looking at a resume? And then what's the first thing you're assessing maybe in a first interview or first conversation?
Well, boy, I'd say just the first thing is, I think, I like to be results driven, but I have to be honest, over the years is customer focused, right? What are they doing? Who is the customer? And are they customer focused? Because sometimes it's not just about external, customers like, David, I don't want to be a product manager. I think, no,
Yeah.
who is the customer? Because sometimes the developer could be the customer, right? Your management may be the customer, but understanding, who your customer is and you're passionate about the results that you're working to build and achieve, impact with a customer. That's one. The other one is the other values, right? Honesty, integrity, communication, EQ, right? There are some people that are quite characters, right? But at the same time, we need to be very inclusive. We need to be very welcoming because I'll be honest, there's no room for that non-inclusive, kind of behaviors and culture is just not acceptable anymore.
100%, and that obviously curtails right into veterans breaking into the industry, other minority groups, et cetera, which is wonderful to hear. I guess to take a step back, maybe give you the chance to ask a question to me or my network as far as kind of what we're seeing across the industry. Is there any insider questions you might have for myself, having a pretty good view, I think, of kind of what's going on across cybersecurity in general?
Well, the first question I'd always ask is then, Alex, is what do you think for us, the very passionate, companies that are, grow, promote, and are built upon, veterans and veteran programs, what could you think we could be doing, in the Fortune 500, to helping the community even more with the veteran community and hiring?
Yeah, fair enough. It's a huge question. I'm sure you could write probably a 100-page report on how companies can be better across the board, right? I'd say I'm not sure what the outlook is for yourself or similar companies to Oracle or Oracle SaaS Cloud, but I'd say partnering with other programs, other companies, a smaller company like myself and Lawrence Harvey, obviously somebody like myself that's very invested in the community already, coming on a podcast like this is a great one, to be quite honest. Obviously, there's a lot of people that might not necessarily be veterans that are very passionate about that space. I'd say reaching out as an individual or as a company, how can we help, et cetera. And then from an investment standpoint, obviously, just make it, it's really kind of a simple answer, really. It's just kind of make the investment and go out and offer programs or hiring initiatives for veterans. I mean, kind of put your money where your mouth is in a lot of ways for companies, large and small, to be honest with you. So that's kind of the short and ugly answer. It's a big one, I think, but that's kind of what came to mind.
Right. Thanks for kind of sharing. The other question I'm going to ask is then, what is the positions that are in the highest demand, from the community, to find in, all the major companies,
Yeah.
What is it red team? Is it pen testing? What's the number one?
Yeah, well, I think companies always struggle the most to hire pen testers, kind of despite what the demand is. That's a very tricky and technical skill set. A lot of, especially smaller companies, just their technical TA team might not be experienced and don't have the network, quite simply. And oftentimes pen testers are less receptible, I think, to potentially switching jobs, that kind of stuff. So that's one that comes to mind. But just in the market overall, I think with a lot of potential internal cybersecurity programs, not necessarily full steam ahead on growth, let's say, a lot of consultancies and then the federal space is where I'm seeing the most growth as a sector. As far as skill sets, I think cyber defense still has to be number one. That's naturally kind of the first box that you would tick in a lot of ways. And then cloud security and cloud security architecture is a big one right now. We're seeing, especially across consultancies, major need there. And out of all the kind of domains that might have a talent shortage, I would say that's probably the tightest one at the moment as far as total amount of people in the market that have that skill set. And like you said, are client facing and have also the interpersonal skills. That's probably kind of the second main one that comes to mind.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
The last would say that certainly I'd like to promote a podcast that we do at Oracle, the Maven podcast. Certainly we do it not just for Oracle, we do it for all veterans. It's very public. It's on Audible. It's on Apple, iTunes, things like that. Are there other podcasts, Alex, that you're getting started, but other ones that you might recommend to the community to listen or watch?
That's a great question. There's not one that immediately comes to mind that's like a go-to for me. There's a lot of other chief information security officers like yourself that are really active. The only one that I've kept in tune with is Jason Loomis and Paul Love, if you're familiar. They run a really great show. It's very interactive. Similar to this one, it's just as far as kind of general outlook into the market. They'll kind of deep dive into certain skill sets and domains. And Jason's come on my show in the past, so he's wonderful. But that's the only one that comes to mind at the moment. But I think right now, a lot of people are looking to have a voice like myself and a lot of people I'm seeing, especially even at Lawrence Harvey across other areas, the cloud sector, et cetera, are ramping up similar conversations and shows like this. And it's really valuable to have people like yourself come on and really give a full view into the market. Obviously, from my perspective, one day I could be working a senior penetration testing position over all the way to a director of cyber defense. And it's a wide view, but maybe not necessarily as much of a deep view as someone like yourself has, working at multiple companies and having been in the industry so long. So it's really great to have you on. It's kind of the ultimate answer. I guess for me, those are all the kind of main questions I had about at least giving an outlook into the market. And certainly for veterans, I hope listening, we're able to get some really valuable insight. And I'd certainly encourage anyone listening to reach out to myself and potentially David here as far as kind of follow up or questions you might have. But the final kind of more fun question I like to ask people that come on is, what's the worst sales or I guess even recruiter outreach that you've had in the last couple of years, or even in your career overall? We usually get some pretty good answers.
Well, I shouldn't give away my secret, but I have a secret. Certainly, as we know, that I get lots of people recruiters and salespeople all trying to reach out to me, right, on LinkedIn. But I learned this trick. I wish I knew I remember who taught it to me, but my trick is I put an emoji in front of my name, right? And LinkedIn lets you put emoji in front of your name. And so the trick is I know when I get all these messages, it says, "Hi," emoji instead of my name. And I know immediately, is this a real person? Is this a bot? Or is this someone that actually really care of who they're talking to? And it weeds out 95% right off the bat, right? So it's an amazing little trick that you can do. And it really helps us that get thousands of these a week.
That's a great shout. Yeah, I guess I think I'd realize that myself, but that's a good one. I'm sure it works for a lot of people. Are there any sales reach outs that you've had in the past that were just so ridiculous or over the top? Stephen Davis, who came on our first show, said that somebody had reached out and offered him a meet and greet with LeBron James or something like that. Some funny ones like that.
Well, the funny ones, I think, is the element is that when they, I always love that the ones where they say that, hey, would you guys like to, I'm at Oracle, say, hey, would you guys like to learn Java, right? And saying that we can help you guys actually learn, Java so you can advance yourselves in development. And like, do you know what company you're talking about? Or we also, another ones are, we can help you move to the cloud. I'm like, we are a cloud provider, right? So that's good. They make you chuckle sometimes.
Yeah, there's some good LinkedIn posts about funny outreaches like that. Always worth the question, always curious. So fair enough. But yeah, no other main questions for me unless you've got anything else. Like I said, really appreciate having you on. I think that about does it here for like I said, our third episode. Stay tuned next month for Aman Sarohi. He's the Chief Information Security Officer over at People AI. Going to talk about kind of the AI landscape and how that might affect cybersecurity, which I'm very excited about. David, I appreciate you a ton for coming on again. Hopefully we can have you on again soon. Talk to you later. I appreciate it a ton.
Thanks, Alex. It's been great. And I look forward to helping and continuing to connect with the community. And I look forward to our next session.
You bet. Take care, everybody. Cheers.